All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. I'm so excited to be back here. It seemed like just yesterday, I was doing another episode, which was yesterday, but but it's really awesome to be able to be here. This will be episode 6 of season 2. It has been a long time coming, and I'm just so excited, and I can't speak enough. You guys are probably going to get tired of me saying, well, why you keep thanking us and all this other stuff? But I just want y'all to know that I would not be here doing this without you guys. And I'm truly humble and appreciative of all the support that you guys have been doing, not only for me, but for the guests who have been on this episode, on this podcast. So thank you. I appreciate you, and just keep tuning in. Without further ado, because you guys know I can talk, I'm going to have my guest introduce herself. I'm so inspired and just excited for this conversation today.
Good afternoon, Michael. My name is Taisha Watson-Jack. I am a licensed clinical social worker based in Florida. However, I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. I am the licensed program supervisor for a school-based therapy program via KIP Jacksonville. I've been here a couple of months. Prior to that, my career has pretty much been working with children and families. I've worked foster care. I was also once in foster care. My teen years were spent in foster care, so I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, because I'm excited. I'm excited because you have a world of expertise, at your hand, and experience, more so experience. So without further ado, to whatever extent you feel comfortable with, could you walk us through your experience in care to your life now?
Okay, so I have 3 sides. There's 3 sides of my experience with foster care. So I'll start with the first one. I was a teen in foster care. My teen years, age 14 through 19, were spent in foster care when I grew up in New York. So at the age of 14, me and 5 of my siblings were placed in foster care due to my mom's struggles with substance abuse, right? So the first 5, those years, I spent 5 years in foster care. I got pregnant as a teen, and because of that, I chose to sign myself out of care because I'm about to date myself right now. When I was in foster care, a teenage mom could not keep her child with her unless she signed her child into foster care. So I elected not to do that, and I signed myself out, and I moved back in with my mom. The years I spent in foster care, there's 2 sides to it. So for me, it was difficult, right? Because that whole process is never easy. But it also changed my life, right? So when you're a child, the things that go on in your home, for most kids, they think that's their normal, right? Children think this is going on everywhere because it's going on in their house. So being taken out of my environment gave me the opportunity to see how healthy individuals live. And I learned that the way my family operated wasn't healthy. There was a lot of struggles with substance abuse, alcoholism. I was exposed to violence, domestic violence. I was neglected. My siblings were neglected. I was also a parentified child, so I took on the role and responsibility of the adults in my house. So foster care kind of gave me a break from that, but there were also some struggles because when I was in foster care, I had to be the one to keep myself and my siblings together. So for 1 year while I was in foster care, we didn't see my younger brother. And I had to advocate for us to find out where he was, what agency he was with, and how we could go about getting supervised sibling visits, because although they took us and placed us in care, we didn't ask for that, and we deserve to see each other. That's our right. Siblings should see each other. So my experience in foster care was, although it was tough, I will say that it changed my life. My foster mom was a good person. I know I've heard horror stories from some people, but my foster mom was a very good person. She taught me how to advocate for myself, along with some of my caseworkers. I got a crash course in self-advocacy at the age of 14. So my mouth was very big. I asked 50 million questions. I wanted to know everything I could possibly know so that I could navigate foster care. With that being said, there were still a lot of things I didn't know when I signed myself out. Like I didn't know that they pay for you to go to college. That wasn't something that was told to me. That wasn't a thing. There's a lot of resources as a teenager, especially when your goal is changed from family reunification to independent living. There's a lot of things that you should know. There are a lot of resources available to you. And I feel like a lot of teens in foster care don't have access to those resources. Independent living is supposed to prepare a teenager to age out of care at 18 and live on their own. But, clearly that's not happening. I don't know where the ball has been dropped at, but that's not happening. So yeah, my teen years were spent in foster care. At the age of 21, I became a kinship foster parent to my 3 younger siblings. So I also know what it feels like to be a foster parent. That was a lot because at 21, I became the parent to 3 teenagers, plus I had 2 children of my own. So that was a lot. Didn't get a lot of support with that. And part of it was probably on me because I didn't ask for help. I will say, like, I wasn't a person who felt comfortable with asking for help. I felt like I had to do everything myself. So I didn't ask for a lot of help. I didn't know what resources were there for me. So I basically was a kinship foster parent to my teenage sisters, and they aged out of care with me. All of them aged out of care into their own, apartments, lives, and stuff like that. I will say that because of my experience as a teenager, I was able to help guide them when they aged out, and was able to help them and work with their independent living coordinators to get them resources that they needed. So that was my teen years. And then as an adult, I was a kinship foster parent. I also worked as a supervisor for a foster care program in New York. That was very interesting experience because I could relate to the families and the children. So I had different perspectives than someone coming in who doesn't understand the foster care system or what it's like to be in foster care. There was a lot of, for me, just in terms of mental health, there was a lot of having to be self-aware of my triggers because I was in foster care. A lot of separating myself from my cases because you become invested in the lives of these families you work with, and you want things to go well for them. I will say I don't like judges. I don't. I think the system works. For the most part, it doesn't help. I know it's supposedly designed to help and to keep children safe, and I understand that part of it. But if you, for example, if you have a mom who has struggled with substance abuse for 25 years, there's a high possibility that she's going to relapse, right? There are some stressors in her life that may cause her to relapse. So if you have a mom who is saying, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now because I have 6 children and they're all in foster care, and this judge is trying to give me all of these children back. But the caseworkers are advocating, asking the judge to, instead of giving all of them back to her at once, stagger how you give them back to her, because mom is clearly saying she's overwhelmed. And the judge, you don't listen because judges go by what's on paper versus what the reality is. If you're the person working the case, then you have a better idea of what's happening than the judge does. But judges go by what they see on paper. A mom who struggled with substance abuse for 25 years, a 6-month drug treatment program is not going to, I'm not saying it's not going to help her, but she needs more than that, because she lived, and I'm talking about a client I specifically had. She lived in this therapeutic community for 6 months. And there she had all the resources at her disposal, all the help she needed, but now she's trying to live on the outside of that. So let's get her some resources in place to help her prior to sending her children home. The judge didn't want to hear that. So all the kids were sent home to her, and the children were re-traumatized because they were placed back in care because mom relapsed. So things like that, that's what I mean when I say the system is not set up for success. Right? We need more resources for parents, for children, family and protective factors. Family plays a big role in protective factors. I know for me it did. Part of the reason I feel like I didn't feel so alone when I was in foster care is because I had constant contact with my family. Some of that was because I advocated for myself, and I also had a foster parent who wasn't just supportive of me and my sibling, but also my family as well. So I think that we need that. Those discussions need to happen. Like if you're going to become a foster parent, why do you want to become a foster parent? You know, unfortunately, and I'm going to say it, a lot of foster parents become foster parents because it's a check. You know, children are not checks. So people always ask me, you know, they're exploring becoming a foster parent. They'll ask me, you know, what should I think about? And my first question is always, why do you want to become a foster parent, right? Check your why first, because if you want to become a foster parent because it's an added income, then you shouldn't do it because you're not in it for the right reason, because it's not just about the child, it's about the whole family. So I think that working within the system of foster care, I got to see literally, you know, what happened to me happened to other people. So I think mental health is definitely a big component of that. It's very important that as someone who works within that system, that we constantly check in with ourselves. I know for me, I had to, because I got triggered a lot. There were a lot of situations that were similar to my situation. And, you know, I wanted to take all the kids home with me. And my husband is like, we can't have all these kids living here. You know, you can't bring kids home, stuff like that. It was just a very, I loved it. And people look at me like I'm crazy when I say that. Foster care is a personal passion of mine because I know what it feels like. I was one of those kids in foster care, specifically teenagers who are in foster care. That's the individuals that I really want to work with. I would like to start a mentoring program for teens aging out of care, because I feel like they don't have the information and the resources they need, which leads to a lot of things: homelessness, going to prison, being victimized, you know, exploited, sex trafficked, all of those things, because they don't have the resources. A lot of them don't know that they can go to school, they can take up a trade. They should be when you're, you know, the state wants them to age out at 18 and live on their own as adult. I don't know too many 18-year-olds that's ready to live on their own. Like, they don't even know what to do. They need guidance. So that is something definitely that I would like to do. Where I'm at now in my life, I'm much older than a lot of people that I work with. I am currently, like I said, program supervisor for an agency based in Florida. We have a mental health component based in the school. So I have school-based therapists that work in the schools, and they provide mental health services to children in schools. A number of our students are in foster care. And my number one goal with that is to connect them to mental health services. Why? Because one of the things I noticed that I can pinpoint when I was in foster care, no one thought I needed mental health services, because I was the, how do I say it, the good girl, or the child who didn't, you know, foster children are labeled, right? They have all these behavioral issues. I was the opposite of that. You know, I did everything you told me to do, never said no, didn't give any problems, straight A student. So because of that, no one thought that I needed mental health services. I was, oh, she's a good kid, she's fine. And that was the furthest thing from the truth. I just felt invisible as a teenager in foster care. And to her credit, my foster mom would talk to me, but it's not the same as talking to, you know, a mental health professional. There's not a child in foster care that's okay. Not necessarily saying they have a mental health diagnosis, but that whole process of just having someone come into your home and take you from your family and place you with someone possibly that you don't know, that's traumatic, and it needs to be addressed. And I don't think it's addressed enough.
Well, I just want to say you dropped a lot of nuggets. You dropped a lot of nuggets, and I'm about to retrace some of this back, you know, and we're gonna break some of this down for the audience listening, and because you hit on some very fine points, and I feel like it can be expanded upon. So I'm gonna start with your 5 years in care. We're gonna start within those 5 years.
Okay.
What was the removal process, if you remember? What was that like for you? Because you spoke about trauma, as you just said, you know, that process being very traumatic, you know, but for you personally, what did that feel like, look like, and how did that weigh on your mental health, you know, and just walk me through that.
Yeah, so like I said, I grew up in New York. And when I got placed in foster care, so now in New York, it is known as New York City's Administration for Children's Services, right? When I was placed in foster care, this was in 1989. It was called New York City's Bureau of Child Welfare. So prior to the caseworkers coming into my home, my mom came home and I was babysitting my younger siblings and said, BCW is on their way to the house, clean up. And I was so frustrated with her that I was just like, whatever, I'm not cleaning up, because I didn't believe her. And then the police and a social worker showed up at our door and there were no adults in the house. So they came in, and then right after they came in, my mom came home, and you could tell, it was obvious that she was high off of whatever drug she took. And the social worker decided that it wouldn't be safe for us to stay there. So they told my mom they were going to remove us for the weekend and bring us back that Monday, as long as she could get a family member to come in and help her, because they wanted to make sure we were safe. So they did that. My grandmother, who at one point lived with us and had moved out, she came back and told the social worker that she would stay and help while my mom got herself together. She would help take care of us. And that was that Monday morning. That Monday afternoon, police came back with the social worker and removed us again. So when I got placed in foster care, that night they took all of us to, my foster mom lived on the same block that we lived on. So they took all of us to her house. That next day, when my grandmother came and they said they was gonna leave us with her, and then that afternoon when they came back, they told me and one of my siblings to go back up the street to my foster mother's house, and then took my other younger siblings to place them somewhere else. And then I found out a couple months later that the reason why they decided that they weren't going to let us stay with my grandmother and that they were going to keep us in foster care was because the social worker saw my mom, I guess, in a drug transaction, buying drugs or something like that. And they decided that it wouldn't be safe for us to stay there. My thought process was what was happening to my siblings, because again, I was parentified. So I was acting in role of parent. So my sole focus was on them, how they were feeling. I felt a lot of guilt because I felt like had I listened to her and did what she asked me to do, and this is the mind of a 14-year-old, if I had to clean the house like she asked me to, maybe we would have gotten to stay, all the possibilities, what could I have done? This is my fault. I should have did something, I shouldn't have talked to them. And then also my worry was for my mom because she was by herself. Like, what is she gonna do to herself? Is she gonna hurt herself? So I was pretty much in a state of being just numb, but at the same time relieved, if that makes sense. Because I was honestly just over it. I was tired of our situation. I never got to be like a carefree teenager or a child. I just felt like there was always something. But then on the flip side of that came the feelings of guilt for feeling that way. Like, this is your family. And I was taught at a young age, it's family over everything. You just endure regardless because it's family. You have to do all these things for your family, and you're the oldest and your siblings are dependent on you. And now my siblings are in a place and I don't know where they're at, right? I don't know when I'm going to see them again. I don't know what's going to happen to them. I don't know when we're going home. So if I do see them and they ask me, when are we going home? I can't answer that. So there was all these thoughts going through my head. And then on top of that, I'm a teenager and I still live in the community where everybody knows us, right? So everybody knows my mom, my grandmother, and now I'm not living in a house, I'm living in this house. So now I got to deal with the embarrassment and the shame that comes with that, because kids being who they are, they ask 50 million questions. Like, why are you living here now? What happened to your mother? And where's your, your other siblings and stuff like that. So it was a lot for a 14-year-old. Looking back now that I'm older, I know I handled it to the best of my ability, but in that moment, I was surviving, right? But in that moment, it didn't feel that way. It felt like I let everybody down, I didn't protect my siblings. There were just a lot of thoughts running through my head at the time. And I feel like because of the type of child I was then, no one realized that I was struggling myself, because it didn't appear as if I was struggling. And I still operated. When you're a parentified child, it's kind of hard to go from being a parentified child to being a child. That's very difficult. You don't know how to navigate just being a child. Like I didn't have friends my age because the peers my age got like, they irritated me because I couldn't identify with them. Like, you know, their behavior was normal, mine wasn't. But at the time, it just felt like, you know, I don't want to be friends with them because the things you're complaining about, like, are you serious? Your mom didn't buy your pair of sneakers because she had to pay bills. I'm sitting like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, that's not something to complain about. But for a 14-year-old, that's age appropriate behavior. But for me, I acted and operated as an adult. And my foster mom would say, you know, it's okay. You know, you don't have to do certain things. And I'm constantly like, at that age, taking care of others. And it was, you don't have to do that, but I didn't know how to not do that, if that makes sense, because that was just my life. That's what I did.
Definitely. I just want to highlight that because, like, even though your experience was win, because you know, I'm not was win.
Right.
You know, what you're speaking upon right now about being parentified, you know, and teens having to take care of their other siblings and then being put into care and understanding that your reality is actually probably a little bit more dysfunctional than a healthy reality.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yes.
is a shock in itself, but also much like when you're in placement for years, which I experienced, you become institutionalized.
Yes.
You know, but in the aspect of I've had to mature faster, and now you telling me I need to step back.
Right.
You know, there's no way you
No.
can undo that, you
Yes.
know, without further harm, you know, or, you know, triggers or trauma, you
Yes.
know, and I think it's really important, you know, to highlight that because I have a lot of, you know, foster parents, a lot of people who work for agencies that listen to this to understand, you know, if you're working with those teens who have been, you know, parents essentially because their parents wasn't parenting, you know, for their other siblings, that this is what the mindset is operating like, you know, at 14, 13, taking care of, you know, the baby or, you know, the 5, you know, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You have to focus on trying to make sure that your grades is good and also making sure that there's food on the table, but also making sure that there's clean clothes, but
Absolutely.
also for some instances, somebody working under the table, making sure that the bills are getting paid because mom or dad can't pay the bill. That's a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that, and I don't think they do it enough. I know they offer, like for foster parents, they offer, you know, training classes, but I think there should be something geared towards just being trauma informed for foster parents, because when you're taking in a child that's taken and being placed in foster care, they come with a lot of trauma. There's a lot of things that incidents that occurred that led up to them being placed in foster care. So they were traumatized at home, and it's complex trauma because it's happening over a period of time. It's not one incident. It's something is happening all the time. It's repeated. I know for me, just you know, being a witness to domestic violence, being exposed to, like, you know, I watched at 12, my mom overdosed. You know, thank God she didn't die at that time, but I watched her like overdose, and I had to make the choice between calling the police and knowing that if the police come and they see her, because she's the only adult here, and they see the situation, they're going to remove us. So being in a position to make that decision, just having to make the choice between, okay, they're going to move us, but I have to save her life. 12-year-old shouldn't have to deal with that. So a child coming in foster care, you're right, like parentified, you just saying, oh, you know, just be a kid. That's not how that works. Or I had this said to me too, you know, you should be lucky you're here now because you're not in that situation. That's not okay, because for that child, that's still their family. Regardless of what happened in that home, that was normal for them, and that's still their family. So saying things like, oh, you should be grateful, or I don't know why they're acting out because look at where they're at now, look at where they came from. They're safe here. How do I know I'm safe? And you being safe and feeling safe is not the same. I could be in an environment where it appears to be safe and people are telling me that I am safe and still not feel safe. So I think these things need to be addressed. Like, yeah, it was like, oh, you know, you can relax, you can be a kid again. And I'm like, what is that? and how do I do that? Because I have no idea how to go from being the caregiver for everybody to just having to worry about myself. And even that, there was a certain level of guilt that came with that. I struggled with that. Like, how do I do that? And, that's not fair because I was conditioned to do these things as a child. So yeah, I just think there should be some trauma-informed training for foster parents. That's just something I feel like needs to happen, that I don't know if it's happening in other states and other places, but I haven't seen it so far.
Definitely. And, in my state, there's some kind of trauma-informed training, but what I hear more specifically that you're saying, and what I'm noticing as a trend within advocating and speaking to all these other people, is that we need to stop putting, like, it's one set of shoes.
Yes.
In an aspect of foster care or foster children. We need to start highlighting these different aspects of trauma or youth come into care. You have your youth that have been parentified, that have been the caregiver, that has been the breadwinner at like a young age, but also that person may have experienced sexual or, domestic and stuff like that. So you need to, and I don't want to get into the realm of like, well, we're breaking all these different categories. How do we try to, but in the aspect of giving love, giving care, making sure that person feels safe when they are removed, because unfortunately removals sometimes are inevitable and they do need to happen. How can we best meet that specific youth with this specific kind of trauma where they're at? We already know that there's different facets of trauma, which you have a person who may have experience, being abused. That was the sole thing, experience getting verbal abuse or what have you. So if you understand and you study what the behavior signs of youth who came into care, who've been just specifically abused, you can learn how you can make, certain trends of how you can support them. If you study how someone who has been sexually abused, and what those behaviors look like when they come into care, you can target specific ways to help them.
Absolutely.
So I think, a lot of our systems have like this one, if we just make it overall trauma informed, this is what trauma is, we can but that's not working, because we still have the gaps and we still have people falling through those gaps. Not saying that everybody can fall through it, but at some point, everybody was at the edge of almost falling through.
Exactly.
So
trauma looks different for everybody, right? What may be traumatic experience for me may not be that traumatic for you. It varies depending on the person. So it's not the point I guess I was trying to make is it's not a one size fits all. We need to learn how to, like you said, meet them where they're at, meet the child where they're at. Whether it's you were parentified, you were neglected, you were sexually abused, physically abused, whatever that looks like, tailor it to the care of that child to that specific child and what they're going through. And I'm not saying it's not happening, but I don't think it's happening enough. I know it didn't happen for me.
I recently was working with an organization to develop a safety plan and to really just assess their safety plan. And one thing that was brought to my attention that I didn't know, not all organizations or agencies do a safety plan when a person comes into care. And that was mind-boggling to me because I'm like, it's so much information that you can gather, from just simply, and of course, when kid comes into care, they really just in a state of shock, but even then, they want to know what's up. So they're willing to talk and have that conversation. And as long as you treat them with respect, but also you have to be prepared that they may not say anything, So for those people who are willing, that's a perfect opportunity to really get an assessment of how we can best support this individual while this person is in our care, But that was mind-boggling me. I want to kind of navigate because I wrote down some little bullet points. So although you was already parenting, you was out here living your adult life. And you became a teen parent.
Yes, I did.
And I know that was very significant, for you. What was that in the aspect of?
I got pregnant with my daughter, and had her December of 1992. I had my daughter, I'm sorry, she'd probably kill me if she heard me say this. I had my daughter, I got pregnant at 18, had her when I was 19. I had her in December of 1993. I decided a couple of months before I had her that I was going to sign myself out and go back to living with my mom. And I did that for a number of reasons. The biggest reason was I didn't want her to be in foster care. That was not something I was even willing to explore. And it's funny how when I decided to make that decision, all of a sudden, all the powers that be thought I needed therapy. But the entire 5 years I was in foster care, I didn't need therapy. And that was like my mind was clear when I made that decision. My child will not be raised in foster care. No child I ever have will, excuse me, be in the foster care system. So I made a decision to sign myself out of care. It was one of the most scariest experiences I've ever had. I was scared the entire time I was pregnant with my daughter for a number of reasons. The biggest one being I thought I was going to ruin her, right? Because of my childhood. I don't know how to be a good parent because I didn't have the example, right? Our parents model what parenting is for a lot of us. I didn't have that. I grew up without my father. I didn't meet my biological father until I was 30. So there were a lot of thoughts going through my head, and the main one was, I'm not going to be a good parent. I'm going to ruin this child. I'm just going to ruin her childhood. And then I gave birth to her and changed my life. I knew that if I did nothing else in this world, if I didn't succeed in anything else in this world, I was going to be the best mother I could possibly be to her. And one of my thoughts was, in order for me to do that, I have to take care of me and deal with my stuff so that my stuff doesn't touch her. And to this day, that's like, you could ask me, none of the degrees, license, any of that matters. My most biggest accomplishment is that I was able to be a healthy parent to my children. And that's because of the birth of my daughter. And everybody's, you're 18, you're pregnant, what are you going to do with a baby? For me, there was a lot of shame that came along with being pregnant as a teen because I was what you call the good girl. I did what I was told, I listened, I didn't hang out late at night and stuff like that. So people kind of had expectations for me. And, because of my behavior, I was kind of put on this pedestal, and I felt they acted like it too, but I felt like I failed everybody. My childhood caused me, the way I grew up and being parentified also caused me to people please. So I pretty much I never said no, I had no boundaries. So when I got pregnant, it was, for me, a lot of shame came with that because I felt like I let everybody down and I disappointed everybody. So that's where I was in terms of mental health. And then I had my daughter. Another reason why I decided to go back to my mom is because at that point, my mom was doing better and she was getting my other siblings back. And I figured if I'm in the home with her, I can help manage her stress, right? I can help her manage and take care of these children and all of these things. I was wrong. You can't manage someone else. They can do only they can do that for themselves. I learned that the hard way. You can't manage other people's feelings, behaviors. You can only manage yourself. And I learned that in therapy, but also just life experience taught me that. So 2 years after we all went back home to my mom, my siblings were taken again and placed in foster care. And that's when I became foster parent to my 3 younger sisters. Becoming a teen mom was a lot. I don't know what it is to be a teenager. I don't know what it is to be like carefree teenager, child, whatever title you want to put on it. I just kind of, was used to it. So I guess jumped into, going from parenting my siblings to parenting my own child and then becoming parent to my siblings, literally, like them living in my house and I'm their kinship foster parent. So that was an experience in and of itself, but I will say becoming a mom gave me a different perspective. I knew that I had to take care of me in order to take care of my daughter. But again, resources. I didn't there were no resources at my disposal. You know, my caseworker was just like, you need to stay in foster care. You need to put your daughter in foster care. No one was listening to me when I was saying, I don't want my child to be in foster care. Nobody heard that. There was no other option. They weren't willing to explore any other options. So I did in that moment what was best for me and my daughter, which turned out to be a pretty good decision. You know, overall, I think I did pretty good. She's healthy, happy adult now. She's okay, you know, but I made sure one of the biggest takeaways from me was, in order for me to be a healthy parent to her, I have to deal with my stuff. And I did that.
You had your daughter at 18 or 19?
19. I got pregnant at 18,
19.
had her at 19.
You were still in care at 19?
Yes.
And they would have taken your kid at
So
19.
I would have
So
had
this is just mind-boggling to me.
No,
I know
now,
now you can, in my state, you can be in care
yes, you can now.
18, and I believe to like 20, and in certain cases and different things like that. But at some
Right.
point, it was still like that. You could stay like that, and somehow
So-
they removed it, and then now
So
it's
no,
back
this
that
is-
way.
This is what would have happened, right? So I could have stayed in the home I was in with my daughter there with me. But in
Mhm.
order for her to live in my foster mother's home with me, I would have had to place her in foster care. So both of us would have had to be in foster care together. They don't do that anymore. But we're talking about time frame. Remember, I was in foster care. I went in foster care in 1989.
Mhm.
They don't do that anymore. Now you can be in foster care if you're in college or in school up until, I believe, it's aftercare services up until the age of 23. Right. But when I was in foster care, you know, that wasn't a thing. Like, yeah, I had to, for me to continue to live in my foster mother's house with my daughter, I would have had to sign papers placing her in foster care. I refused to do that. So it was either sign papers to place her in foster care or sign myself out.
Who would do that? You know,
Right.
so I'm curious to know if this is still an actual reality for people today, because I know a lot of people, we spoke previously, I was a part of a placement where they had a program for teen moms that were
Right.
in care. So I'm curious to know if that program, they had to sign their rights over in order for their kids to be with them.
In my
You know-
experience, working, when I worked in foster care, this was back in 2015. No, I had a teen mom who was in foster care, but her baby wasn't in foster care.
Okay.
He lived with her, but she didn't have to put him in foster care. Now, I don't know if it's a case by case basis.
Mhm.
I'm only speaking from what I experienced. I know back in the day, like I said, I'm much older than some of the people you've interviewed now, you know. But when I was in foster care, yeah, you had to, if you were a teen mom in foster care, your baby was, for your baby to live with you in that house you were in, you had to sign them into foster care. At least that's what I was told. And I refused to do that. It wasn't even something I was willing to entertain. And because of that, I signed myself out.
Right. And I respect that. I definitely do. I respect that.
Yeah.
Even given all that you have been through to
Yeah.
be placed with that, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm straight.
Yeah. Right.
you know,
That was my
Life
mindset.
ain't been that hard, you know. I can
Yeah.
figure something out, you know.
I'll figure it out.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. That is
Um,
exactly where my mindset was.
And I'm just, you know, now while we're on this aspect, because this was your experience when, you know, but
Yeah.
you know, but also we're in 2022.
Right.
I can only speak for the state of Michigan because I don't know much in this area, but also I've been doing a lot of advocacy for about 10 years now, nationally and then within my state. I can't attest to a lot of supports for teen parents who, and the thing is, most people who go through foster care, we know that the statistics show that they may get pregnant in care.
Right.
You know, so I don't know if there's anything not really combating the pregnancy part, because that may just happen, but supporting them as far as resources and different things like that. I know in the aspect of young adult voluntary foster care, I believe they get a little bit more, but that's if they're young adult voluntary foster care. What if they're in care and what have you? How do we combat that generational cycle.
Yeah.
You know, what supports are we giving to these teen parents to let them know, like, hey, like, you know, we're not bashing you, we're not doing this. How can we support you? How can we help you be a good parent? How
Right.
can we give you the tools, to make sure that you still complete high school, you still go to college, you still get a
Right.
job, and everything, but also make sure that you still can have access to mental health support, because
Yes.
postpartum is a very
It's
very
real.
very
Yes, it
serious
is.
thing,
Mhm.
and I can only understand, the difficulties that adult have, but also more so a teen, a child
Right.
having postpartum,
Yeah.
so I'm just interested, and you guys in the audience, y'all gonna be my researcher. If there's something out there, let me know, because I need to have them on my
That's
have them
I'm
on here.
what you're talking about is what I'm exploring right now. I want to at some point have a mentoring program that is geared towards helping teen parents who are aging out of foster care or who are in foster care who aren't aware of the resources around them, right? Because they're parents, but they're teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be hard to navigate, especially depending on the individual, because as a teenager, most teenagers, the average teenager wants to hang out with their friends, they're self-absorbed. But if you're a teenager and you're a parent, you are responsible for someone else. And sometimes it can be very difficult to do. We know teenagers don't make the best decisions, right? They live in the moment. They don't look at the bigger picture. They don't think about what's going to happen tomorrow, much less next week or the month after. They live literally in the moment. Brains aren't fully developed. They don't make the best decisions. And then when you don't have you're not provided the resources so that you can be the best parent that you can be, or you can be put in a position where you can be the best parent that you can be. Go to school, get your high school diploma, possibly go to college, take up a trade, whatever that looks like, or just even taking care of yourself mentally. Being a parent is not easy. For adults struggle with being a parent sometimes. So being a teen with a baby is like, what am I supposed to do with this person? Like, I don't even know how to take care of myself. And they don't have the resources that they need. I came across a colleague who used to work at a teen parenting program, and there was some struggle with like the apartments they lived in. They're not clean. And I'm just like, instead of penalizing them, let's do some independent living workshops, right? Do some trainings. Not everybody knows how to clean. And it's like, what does that mean? And I'm like, not everybody knows how to clean. If you weren't taught how to clean, you don't know. Teenagers, I feel like, and I have 5 kids. The teenage years, I thought I was losing my mind because they do not want to clean up. That's not something they want to do. It's like, why am I cleaning up? You have to teach them to do these things. But if I'm a teenager in foster care, maybe I've never been taught this. Depending on my situation, nobody was cleaning. So I don't know how to clean up. So, independent living workshops, cleaning, grocery shopping, how to open a bank account, how to get ID, driving lessons, how to get a job, how to complete a college application, how do I apply for trade school, all of these are things that they need. How do I even begin the process of finding a therapist to talk about the things that I need to talk about so that I can take care of myself? Who are you? Who do you want to be? Like, these are conversations that are not happening with them. It's like, there's this, I don't know if it's as big as it used to be, like when I got pregnant, but there's a stigma around becoming a teen parent. It's like, people look at you like you committed the worst possible crime. At least that's how I felt when I was a teen parent. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out how I can do that in the current state I live in right now. So I totally agree that we need to have more of that.
Definitely. It's for me, we have all these different avenues when it comes to child welfare and all these different sectors and categories of outcomes that, unfortunately, some of the outcomes aren't being served properly. Teen parents who have been in care or who are aging out of care, I don't know if there's real actual support, and unfortunately, within this last year, within the last couple months, I do a lot of peer support and just helping out people, you know,
Mhm.
who've been in care, if they reach out. And I've been in courtrooms advocating that kids not being taken away. I've been, you know, a supportive adult for, you know, people not too younger than me, you know, trying
Yeah.
to make sure that the kid doesn't, you know,
Mhm.
and the thing is, like, I don't have kids, but anything that I can do to stop the cycle,
Right.
I will make sure that I can help you and connect you to resources and different things like that. But the thing is, what I find as a trend, there's me, there's you, and there's individuals, but there's no collective really taking
Yes.
on the initiative to be like, okay, this is the issue.
Yeah.
Okay. How can we support these people? Because if we don't support them, the kids are going to care.
Yep.
More than likely,
It's gonna repeat itself.
you know,
Yep.
because as we know, unfortunately, side effect of our systems that we have are pipelines, and
Yep.
those pipelines connect you to drugs, connect you to prison, or connect you to death.
Yep. Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
we have to, really do some evaluation in that and some self-reflection too,
Mhm.
because I'm a big person that believes that, you ain't gotta be connected into child welfare to help somebody.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
it ain't, you don't have to have a certain cape, shape, or size or what have you. Like, we all have a
Yes.
duty, and on this earth, to, our community,
Yep.
and our people. And if we all just chipped in to just support one another, what would that look like?
Yes.
But I want to be mindful of our time.
Mhm.
You spoke about, and just kind of just going over some of these highlight moments that you spoke about spending 5 years in care, being a teen parent, having a parent that was absent, but also having a parent that was present but absent in the presence,
Yes.
due to substance abuse. You talked about how important it was to keep that connectivity with your siblings in care, but wasn't really a lot of supports to keep that going,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, because of to step up to the plate being a caregiver, you went through a lot of stress because of that, you know.
Yes.
Um, and then you also spoke about, check I forget how you said it, but signing yourself out of care,
Yes. Mhm.
and then being a parent of two at that point,
Yeah.
and then becoming kinship to your three younger siblings,
Yep.
you know, at 21.
Mm. Yes.
we we
Yeah.
setting records with these ages,
Right. Yeah.
at 21, but continuing. And I'm breaking these down because if resiliency has been unknown to you,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
if perseverance,
Yeah.
and you have not seen it in the flesh. I just
Yeah.
really, look, because at 18, 19, 21, 14, these are ages when we don't even know what we doing tomorrow, let
Right.
alone
That part. Yeah.
let
Right.
alone, thinking of others, and it just speaks to who you are and the challenges and the barriers that you have overcome to be who you are today. And then, you spoke about um working, as a supervisor, and doing that work, and how challenging, but how relieving and satisfying it was for you to be on the other end of things, ensuring,
Yes.
a better future,
Yeah.
and a safer environment for other people,
Yes.
and then lastly, some things that you kind of put on us to self-reflect is the issues surrounding teens. Unfortunately, there's not enough homes. There's not enough support for our family prevention and preservation. There's more teens aging out than there's more teens being reunified or
Yes.
having successful outcomes.
Yep.
And people are aging out into homelessness, which I don't understand.
I don't.
I don't
Yeah.
understand. If I had spent such and such years in care, and you have been my parent, the state has been my parent, unfortunately. How is it that when I age out, the thing that you can offer me is a homeless shelter or the
Yeah.
streets?
That's
So,
not okay.
that's not okay.
Not
We
okay.
need to whoever listening, we figure that
Yeah,
out.
get it together, please. Please get it together, because if the goal is independent living, then that means you should be preparing me to live independently.
Right. And the biggest thing which I've learned, and I say a little story here before my last bullet point. When I was aging out, did the whole family team meeting, the semi-annuals and everything like that to prepare. But I wasn't able to apply for housing or a housing voucher until 18.
Yes,
But my thing is, if you know this person is getting ready to age out, their outcome is, they're getting ready to age out by 16, 17, that they're not getting reunified, or they're not going to be fostered, they're going to be an independent living or a placement or residential,
Right.
whatever, why are we waiting to that last minute? And I know, unfortunately, it's not on the state's end,
Mhm.
Unfortunately, there's some legalities, there's some legislation and different things like that. But this is a perfect area to expand upon. So I challenge you guys as advocates out there, what have you, this is something I've been advocating about, is being able to make an exception for foster youth that are getting ready to transition to be able to apply, because these voucher lists be 2-3 years, lovely sometimes,
Yeah.
for them to be able to apply on these lists at 16 or 17, if we know that the outcome, so they can at least at 18 got a chance, because if the list
Right.
is 2 to 3 years long,
Exactly. The list is long. Yeah.
how at 18 you think I'm about to get a house?
Right.
And I even say even more so, if you're not a female and if you're not, a parent,
You're
your
not
chances of getting a
resources.
housing voucher is 0.
Yeah. You're absolutely correct. If you are a young man aging out of foster care, they don't cater to men, period. We're talking about just housing. They don't cater to men overall, period. Much less a teenager aging out of care versus a female teenager aging out of care with a baby. They're gonna find somewhere for her to go. I know, see, the states there, and I feel like this should be the same across the board, no matter what state you live in. Because in New York, like for example, with my younger siblings, my sisters, when they were aging out, at the age of 17, there was a housing application being completed for them, so that by the time they turned 18 and were ready to age out, they can start looking at apartments they wanted to choose, or exploring different apartments where they were going to live, things like that. I'm aware that that's not the case for every state. It should be. And even just to piggyback off of what you said, housing is just one of the things a child aging out of foster care needs. There's a whole lot of other things they need. They should be connected to a safe individual within the community, because again, what 18-year-old is ready to navigate being on their own? They're not.
I said this once before, or a couple times. Studies show that the brain stops developing after 25 or age 25,
Right.
But we also understand that when trauma is induced in certain ages, that stunts the brain. And sometimes it stunts the brain at that age.
Mhm.
But also, we also know when there's numerous different placements, a kid is set back, several different years and what have you. So understanding that that is all these different outcomes, when a person who's been in foster care has been in over 2 different homes, or it has endured abuse and neglect, or whatever facet you would like to label that as, even at 18, their brain ain't developed. At 25, right, they still could be at 8. They could be just making it to 18 at 25. Absolutely. So we have to, this isn't just stuff I'm throwing out. This is scientific. This is proof that has been shown. Exactly. And what have you. So how can we best support, and I look at it as, if we need to take foster care out of it, what have you, how can we best support our potential neighbors?
Exactly.
How can we just be human beings and understanding that people go through stuff, and what can we do to help them? We talk about, we have the people that are like, a lot of people are on assistance and all this other stuff. What are we doing to help them to get off?
Exactly.
What are we doing to support them? You're like, they're unmotivated. They may be going through depression. Mm-hmm. Have you asked them how they feel? Have you checked?
Exactly.
So, I get it and I respect it, but we all have a job to do, on this earth. And some people are like, no, I might be tripping. You can be mad at me all you want to, but I believe we all have a job to do to take
Yes,
care of one another. That doesn't
I
mean
agree.
that you can't have self-care for yourself, that you can't say no to people sometimes, but it's the little things that we can do to make sure that we okay.
Yep,
And that we're doing good. We've seen it throughout COVID that everybody came together. So look, there's no reason why people can't say we
right,
can't do it again.
yeah.
So, but the last bullet point you mentioned was the court system.
Mhm.
And the court system has been a challenging system for years. Not only just for foster care, but so many
Yeah,
different
for
facets,
everybody.
criminal justice,
Yeah,
everything.
we'd be here all
But
day.
but one thing that you mentioned that I would like to highlight is just the gap
Yes,
between understanding the people behind the cases.
yes,
And I know some judges have made an effort to try to get involved, but not enough. Not
yeah,
enough.
at least not in
You
my
know,
experience.
and we need to do more. Unfortunately, you have been put in a position of leadership, but also to judge, to
Right.
rule, and um, unfortunately, that means that you have to be well-rounded and trauma informed,
Yes.
family prevention and preservation,
Mhm.
understanding the humans behind the paperwork, you know, um, and I get it, when it comes to law, it comes to judge, and when it comes to the social work, when it comes to child welfare in general, and the systems that we have, these it's overpowered and it's easy to become burnt out. It's
Mhm.
easy to just become a machine and just okay, next case,
Yeah.
this, that, then. But I also applaud you that it's a choice to get to that point.
Mhm.
There's certain procedures now we in 2022 that you can take towards self-care,
Yeah.
maintaining your mental health, building um building, just time for yourself, vacations, whatever you need, creating a village, creating a community, and stuff
Mhm.
like that. Because we know if you continue to do a job and don't take no break, that you're gonna get burnt out. You're gonna probably find
Exactly.
yourself in depression and stuff like that. So what preventative measures are you making sure to make sure that you're okay to be able to do the job? Because there's people lives at stake.
Yeah,
So, I'm a firm believer if you really don't care for the job while you in it,
I agree. Yeah.
find something else that you're passionate about.
Yep.
But child welfare is not an aspect and a place for you to just be like, I'm here to collect a check.
It's not.
That
And I,
not the arena, for that.
as a supervisor, I've even said that to those individuals that I've had the opportunity to supervise. Like, if you ever get to the point where you feel like this is not for you anymore, please let me know. Because that's not a bad thing. It's okay to know that something is not for you anymore. Because when you get to that point, you're not giving your clients, your families, your all, right? When you get to that point where you're questioning, why am I doing this? I don't really care to do this. It's a struggle for you to get up and go to work every day, specifically within child welfare system. When you get to that point, some things need to happen. You have to check in with yourself. And this is something that I even do myself. Like, why am I still doing this? How am I feeling in this position? Do I want to continue to do this position? And if so, what do I need to help me continue to do this position? If not, then what steps can I take to put myself in a position where I am showing up as my best self? It's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I'm not okay. This job is not for me anymore. When it becomes a problem when you stay knowing I just can't do this anymore because you're not giving it your all. And we're not, these are human beings we're working with, right? These are families, children, most parents don't have kids with the thought of, yeah, one day my kid is going to be in foster care and everything's going to be great. That's not what they're thinking. It's traumatic for the parents also. So if you get to the point where you feel like that, talk to somebody, your supervisor, get a therapist. We all come with something, even if it wasn't, you were placed in foster care as a child. It could be something else, whatever it is. Talk to somebody, get a therapist, someone you can lean on, have a support system, all of those things, because if not, you're not going to show up as your best self. And that affects these children that we work with on a daily basis. It affects the families we work with on a daily basis. And that's not okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And thank you for that. Wow. You touched on a lot of things, and I'm really appreciative and honored to be able to receive what you're saying, but also hear what you're saying. Um, Thank you for just speaking truth to the title of my podcast.
Thank you for giving
Resilient
me.
Voices and Beyond. Like, you know.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. This
Definitely.
is, it's therapeutic for me also. People ask me sometimes, why do you tell people your story? Because it is very therapeutic for me, because it's gratitude for me, because I know where I come from and I know where I could have been. And by the grace of God, I'm not where I could have been. Statistics show that, my children should have been in foster care, and I should have possibly been on drugs and, multiple fathers and things like that. And that is not, overall, that's not my story. And I'm thankful for that. So anytime I can share my story to inspire somebody, lift somebody up, that's what I'm going to do.
Definitely. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to be open and vulnerable with us today. Couple things I have left is, any last comments you would like to leave, and this is if you got an album coming out, you got a rap song, if you got a book, or how can people stay connected with you, but yeah.
So last comments, this is for those individuals who experience the foster care system. Don't let that define who you are. That's just a part of your story. It's not the sum total of who you are. You determine who you want to be, not the system, not what happened to you. Also, get a therapist. I can't say how much that helps someone to help you understand why you are the way you are, why you operate the way you are, why you behave the way you are. All of those things can bring you a sense of peace. So if you can, get a therapist. But again, don't let your beginning does not have to define your end. You determine who, what, where, when, why, how. To those individuals that want to become foster parents, I can't say this enough. Please check in with yourself. Why do you want to become a foster parent? How far are you willing to go? What are you willing to deal with? These are questions you should ask yourself, because these children coming into your home, they're not coming in there intentionally wanting to, act out, have behavioral issues. They are surviving. They are trying to navigate a situation that for the most part, they don't understand and they did not cause it. So if you're not going to be all in, you probably shouldn't do it. If you are a foster parent, you should have support too, possibly go to therapy with that child so you can learn how to parent that child, because a child who has been traumatized, you're not going to parent them the same way you would parent a child who has not experienced trauma. It looks different. Lastly, where can you keep in touch with me at? On Instagram, I am Taisha, spelled TAIISHAJ _LCSW. Not too many people know this, but I am a romance author. So I write under a pen name, A. Ramore. And you can find me at author A. Ramore on Instagram also. Currently working on a book about my life. Not giving myself a deadline because it's a lot. But I will definitely keep you posted and let you know when I have it finished, when I'm launching it and all that stuff. But again, thank you for having me. I'm very grateful that I was able to talk to you today and share my story.
Well, the honor is all mine. It has been a privilege. And I just, thank you guys for tuning in. I'm just gonna keep it coming, this work, is needed, these voices need to be uplifted, and more so the education behind the wisdom of these experiences. It's priceless,
Yeah.
It's priceless, so as long as people want to come on, as long as I, be doing this, but I just thank you guys for listening and tuning in. I really hope that this is helpful to you all, that you guys are taking some of these things and reflecting on this. But as I get ready to end out, please be safe out there. COVID, is down a little bit, you got monkeypox out there and everything. Please
Yeah.
take care of yourself. Wear your mask if you need to. Make sure that you're sanitizing, but also please do not use sanitizer as a supplement for washing your hands. Please, just keep in mind those things. Just take the right precautions. It takes all of us. We are this big village. So we all have to do our part. Also, there's a lot of things talked about here, that could be potentially triggering. And, I want everybody to be safe. I want everybody to be mindful and everything like that. So if something in here has kind of triggered something or reminded you, take some time to do some mindfulness exercises, debrief yourself before you go through the next thing in your day. We all got to take care of ourselves, if some of this stuff was very enlightening, don't let it fall on deaf ears, share it to somebody else, pass that message on, what you learned or what stood out to you in this, if you're a parent or what have you, and some of these things are topics and stuff like that that you haven't had in your home, or there's conversations about things, have those conversations, talk to your children and stuff like that. They're the next generation. So, in mind of age, for these conversations. But I believe, if families start talking to each other, having those family conversations about these things that are in society, these worldly things and stuff like that, people won't just grow up and be like, oh, this is happening.
Right.
It won't be so much of a shell shock, and it's just passing that mantle on, but this has been Resilient Voices and Beyond. It's truly a privilege being able to put out these episodes and be here. So thank you. I hope you have a good night, a good evening, a good morning, a good whatever you're listening to this. Just let it be good. And thank you. Till next time.